Prelude. Morning, everybody. We're trying a new thing so that we're going to ask people to kind of keep their voices down and to sort of a bit of silence while Catherine plays the prelude. And after that, I'll gong it again, and we'll get the show on the road. Okay? Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Lovely to see you here, and I actually see a few people I haven't seen in a while. It's beautiful to have everybody here today. My name is Bruce Grierson. I'm your service associate this morning, and I'm excited for today. I think we have a really good one for you. There's a saying that we are the sum of where we put our attention, and I feel like the last week or two, our attention has been pulled into sort of some really ominous developments in the world. And I'm hoping that today can be a little bit of a break from that. I'm hoping that the better part of the next hour, we're going to be thinking and talking about beauty, the subject of beauty. Now, that doesn't mean that the challenges of the world have magically disappeared. It just means that sometimes I think we have to take a deep breath and kind of step back and kind of gather our strength so that we can go another round with those challenges. And I feel like we do deep breaths very well around here. And we're going to start with a song that will help us practice that.
Song. It's a wonderful way of grounding ourselves. We're going to start off with one line. It just goes, breathe, breathe. So when you feel comfortable with that, just start singing it. Now if you choose, you can just stay on that line. And it could be a literally grounding base for the whole piece. And then when that feels comfortable, I'll do the melody, which is when I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out. And then it repeats itself round again. And then if you're a soprano or a higher voice, you could take the middle part, which goes. Sopranos, you can help me out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out. So this is very much about just finding your place where you're comfortable. Okay, and then you just stay there. Okay.
That is a lovely way to begin. That's like a spiritual cold plunge to get us going. Well, welcome again, everyone. Lovely to see you all. And for those joining us for the first time, thank you for giving us a try. And if you were here last week and that was your introduction to us and you were going, geez, these guys aren't really a barrel of laughs, are they? Well, please know that our services aren't always that somber. It was Remembrance Day and the events of the world had come on us. We have a saying around here that we love when people drop in to visit, but you really should come 3 times because the services are so different week on week. And that is the big draw of this distributed ministry model that we're experimenting with. Different voices in the pulpit, different voices, different vibes, different perspectives. So I hope today will feel a little bit different from last week, a little bit more elevating, let's say. And as I say, it's not as if the world is objectively better than it was a week ago, but I'm going to suggest that we put ourselves in a different place for this hour. Thank you for pulling onto the siding with me. In this community, we celebrate people from all walks of life, no matter what brought you here, no matter your vocation or your avocation, no matter what religion you grew up with or threw over the side, or even if you ever entertained any religion at all. No matter who you are or who you love, we hope you will feel welcome here. We gather here in gratitude every Sunday on the traditional unceded lands of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Musqueams, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. May we in this sacred place be good neighbors to one another, good stewards to our planet, and good ancestors to our children. Now, to begin our services, we always light a chalice. What I had for breakfast.
We'll try the
Pulpit mic? Okay. All right. We'll try that instead. I was going to say, to set this up by saying this chalice lighting is a tradition that's gone back hundreds and hundreds of years, but I actually went and did a little fact checking and found out it's only about 50 years old, this tradition, though the symbol of the flaming chalice goes back to the resistance movement in Europe and World War II. Back then, Unitarians put candles in the windows of their homes to signal to Jews that they would find safe haven there. So we've always had the flame, but the chalice is a bit of a newer spin, symbolizing service and sacrifice, among other things. So this morning, I'm going to ask Lila, there you are, thank you. We've met, I think, to come up here and do the honors. The youngest, I think you are the youngest member of our congregation at the moment. Thank you so much. Anything you want to say before you light? Anything occurs to you to say? I don't mean to put you on the spot. You weren't scheduled to say anything, but how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of someone as I light one of these.
Nice. Okay. We kindle this flame as a symbol of our gathering. The second candle we light, thanks Lila, deke around behind me in there, lovely. Second candle is our candle of joys and sorrows. Lynn Webster has passed away peacefully. There will be a service, stay tuned for more details about that. You may no doubt have somebody in your mind right now that you want to quietly observe, and invite you to take a moment while Lila lights the second candle and think of that person.
You'll let me speak?
Oh, geez. Yeah, okay.
I want to tell you a joy, because we have a celebrity in our midst. Anybody here get the Globe and Mail? Did anybody see the article yesterday? Centerfold of the opinion section. Have a look. Bruce, talking about explore and exploit their journey to Greece, talking about eating calamari or whitefish. It's a great story, so look for it. He wouldn't make that announcement, that's why.
Yeah. Thank you, Barry. Our final candle is the candle of global concerns. What I like to do now is we take two minutes of silence on this one. Here today are a few simple words as you go to where you need to go on this one. If it helps to keep in mind, feel what you're feeling. Your fear is legit. Just do this. Find your feet, find your bones, find your breath. Identify some things you can hear, feel, smell, taste. We are here now. We are here now. Let's take 2 minutes. Okay, everyone, if you happen to be a student at Lewis Clark State College in Lewiston, Idaho, you could take a course called The Psychology of Beauty. And if you did, you might discover on the first day that it's a bit different from what you thought. It's not about how to be more beautiful. No one's coming away with a makeover or a mani-pedi. Nor is it about how the beauty industry shapes our definition of what beautiful looks like. No, it's none of those things. This course concerns itself with something a little more refined, Platonic beauty. That is beauty the way the ancient Greeks thought about it. And at the end of that first day in your Psychology of Beauty class, you'd receive a homework assignment to be completed at the end of each week for the full term. And here's the assignment. Write down 4 things that you found beautiful this week in one of 4 categories. So one beautiful thing you saw that was designed by humans, a beautiful thing in nature, a beautiful idea, and a display of moral beauty. Okay, so the professor of this class, who's a guy named Rhett Deissner, finds that his students generally don't have much trouble with the first 2, the beautiful thing designed by humans and the beautiful thing designed by Mother Nature. You know, maybe there's a really lovely teapot that somebody served you tea in this week. Or maybe there's a fine maple tree in your neighborhood that's shedding its leaves. Okay, what's this? And apologies in advance because there's a really bad dad joke coming up. This is maple pattern baldness. Okay, that is nobody's definition of beautiful, but I couldn't resist. Okay. All right, so the students had no trouble with numbers 1 and 2. Beautiful things, natural and manufactured. Number 3 was a bit trickier, the beautiful idea. Now, most of us come in contact with, beautiful ideas all the time, but they can slip right past us because we're not kind of primed to identify them as beautiful ideas. That's why the major religions have precepts, and we have our principles to sort of prop beautiful ideas up in the store window. The golden rule is a beautiful idea. You know, it's universal, you can't prove it wrong, and it applies to everyone, atheist or theist. Unity in diversity is a beautiful idea, that we're better together, and the more different we are as a group, the stronger we are as a group. That is a beautiful idea. eBay, I think, is a beautiful idea. eBay, a giant marketplace for buying stuff from each other on faith, taught 250 million people that they can trust complete strangers. That's actually not my insight, but I can't remember who I stole it from. But it's lovely, right? Anyway, given a little nudging, most of the students could eventually come up with an example of a beautiful idea. It was at number 4 that tripped folks up. Moral beauty. What the heck is moral beauty? Well, the short answer is moral beauty is beautiful behavior. And you can credit Aristotle for this one. It's part of his catalog of virtue ethics. So moral beauty is just beautiful actions. And beautiful actions belong, in his view, right at the top of a life well lived. The major religions would say beautiful actions mimic godlike behavior or are divinely inspired. Secular ethicists would say these are human qualities that make the social contract go. They make it hum. Character virtues involve some of the most laudable human traits, like courage, generosity, humility, compassion, justice. But really, those are just words, right? They're abstractions. How do you recognize moral beauty when you see it? Well, the litmus test is that you get goosebumps. You get a little bit choked up. There's a fellow at UCal Berkeley who's really the leading expert in this domain, and his name is Dacher Keltner. Some of you will have heard of him. He was actually the expert on hand when Pixar made the film Inside Out, which was explored the emotions. That's his area, and he was the consulting scientist on that. So Dacher's a positive psychologist, he's best known for discovering a new emotion. For the longest time, we thought there were only 6 human emotions: happiness, sadness, disgust, fear, surprise, and anger. That's it. And everything else was thought to be some mixture of those 6. But Dacher came along and he said, no, there's actually one more, and it's quite different. That 7th emotion is awe. And awe is a super important one in his view. It's the most spiritual emotion. And he doesn't actually use the word spiritual, although he comes close. He said, you don't have to be a person of faith for this one to work its magic on you. So what sorts of things arouse awe in us? Well, some of the stuff we've talked about: natural beauty, mountains, sunsets, northern lights, a moose crossing in front of you on the highway. Things that evoke the scale of the universe or the miraculous clockwork of the living planet. But Dacher found that what kindles awe more powerfully than anything else is moral beauty. Basically, when we see someone do something really generous and lovely, often in difficult circumstances and at a high cost to themselves, it touches us more deeply than anything else we encounter in any other sphere of our lives. And what we're feeling when that happens is kind of the opposite of what Martin Amis called species shame. You know, that's when you see detestable behavior and you go, I cannot believe my species is capable of such low lows. Well, here's the flip side. Call it species pride. I cannot believe my species is capable of such exquisitely high highs. So what are some examples of moral beauty? Well, we can all gin some up if we're given a little time. Everyone's heard of Oskar Schindler. Fewer have heard of this gentleman. He's coming. His name is Witold Pilecki, Auschwitz prisoner number 4859. So Witold is a Polish man who ended up in Auschwitz, not because he was rounded up by the Nazis, but because he volunteered. He deliberately let himself be captured so he could gather information about what was happening inside the camps. And once inside, he built an underground radio setup that broadcast prisoners' accounts to the outside world. He exposed the horrors. For his trouble, he was executed. That's a kind of heroism that almost deserves its own category, that, returning to the den of the lion you just escaped from. I would say Alexei Navalny would qualify there too, Russia's opposition leader. He was free and clear in Germany after recovering from being poisoned, but he went back to Moscow to stand up to Putin, and he met a similar fate to Pilecki. This is a little bit embarrassingly earnest to admit on my part, but I keep a file called Heroes. Maybe it was for a day like this. Another one is Baba Amte. Some of you will have heard of him, the Indian social worker who cared for lepers in post-war India. The lepers were the ultimate untouchables. People were terrified of coming anywhere near them. And Baba Amte wanted to destigmatize lepers and destigmatize leprosy. And he said, look, even if you do catch this thing, there are drugs now that you can take that will cure it. And so to demonstrate, he allowed himself to be injected with bacilli from a leprosy patient. That is hardcore. And I remember when I first heard the story of Baba Amte, I thought, wow, that is sacrifice. What have I sacrificed lately? Let's see. Well, I threw out a jar of tasty spaghetti sauce last week that was a week past its expiry date because it just wasn't worth the risk to the family. Not quite in the same league. This young woman you will know, Malala Yousafzai, who defied the Taliban by continuing to go to school. Girls were forbidden to be educated in that part of Pakistan where she lived, and Malala encouraged other girls to keep studying in defiance of the Sharia law that was being enforced. And she agreed to blog about how women's rights to education and much else were being severely repressed. She wrote under a pseudonym, but her identity leaked out. And you know the rest. One day as she rode the bus home after writing an exam, an assassin shot her in the head. She lived, and then another assassination attempt on her was organized and thwarted at the last minute, and that's when she left for Britain, where she continued to speak out against Islamist extremism, including forced marriages. So that's just straight up courage there. And so is this. And okay, actually, you know what? I'm just in the interest of time, I'm going to skip this fellow, Luigi Ciatti. I'll tell you briefly. He's a Catholic priest who fights the mob in Italy. There's no shortage of examples of extreme heroism that defines a kind of moral beauty. I hope we can deal with this gentleman on another day. But these people seem almost like angels disguised as ordinary people. But I also think you have to be careful of that kind of thinking, careful of deifying human beings because they've done some amazing deed. Do you remember the guy in New York who got dubbed the Subway Samaritan? This was a few years ago. His name is Wesley Autry, a 39-year-old construction worker. He was waiting for his subway train one day when just a few feet from him, another commuter suffered a seizure and tumbled onto the tracks. And everybody froze because at that moment you could see that there was the lights of a train coming around the bend and into the station. Everybody froze but Wesley. Turned out he'd been a Navy veteran, and there was training in him that he would just respond to something like this, and he did. He leapt down onto the tracks. The seizure victim was lying there, and he was too heavy to move, and here's the oncoming train. It's right there, so what does Leslie do? He lies on top of the guy, and he makes himself as flat as possible, holds him down, pins him down, and the train rolls over both of them. Clearance was 1 inch. The undercarriage of the train left grease on Wesley's cap. But they both emerged unscathed. And, worst off was the subway driver who had to take a leave of absence for the stress of that. So it would be hard to argue that Wesley Autry didn't perform a terribly heroic act there. Sunday. But does it complicate things for you if I told you that to dive down onto those tracks, Wesley first had to let go of the hands of his 2 young children? Maybe not, maybe a little. The moral calculus of any act, is complicated. Charles Dickens was once aboard a train traveling from France to London when the train derailed, and he risked his own life to pull the wounded to safety. He saved multiple lives that day. But when the emergency teams arrived to collect the details, and the press arrived to find out who were the heroes, Charles was nowhere to be seen. He wanted no part in any publicity. That's because he'd been on that train with a young woman he was having an affair with. Again, no judgment, but he was clearly conflicted in his own heart about being labeled a hero. So there's a sort of savior narrative that we find irresistible. An individual finds it within themselves to just go all Marvel universe. And another variation of this is the act of radical forgiveness, like the woman in the American South whose son was murdered by a troubled young man. And when this woman met her son's killer, not only did she forgive him, she helped get him back on his feet after he came out of jail, and ended up basically adopting him. It's mind-boggling what some people do. And actually, stories like that they're so impressive that they're kind of hard to relate to. This is so far outside the range of normal human behavior that it's kind of hard to go there in your mind and in your heart. You know, my world of spaghetti sauce level sacrifice just can't take it in. For me, and maybe for you too, though I can't speak for you, it's the smaller gestures of the everyday humaning up that we see that kind of raise the biggest goosebumps. So here's one from a few years ago that I think is pretty great. So there was a basketball game, an NBA playoff game between the Portland Trail Blazers and the Dallas Mavericks. But before the game even began, a bit of drama unfolded during the national anthem. The singer of the anthem was a 13-year-old girl named Natalie Gilbert. She'd won a contest to be there. It was her big break, her Lana Turner moment, you know. Out she comes to center court, the gown, the hair, incredibly intimidating setting, 20,000 fans, their eyes fixed on her, and she almost wills a nervous smile onto her face. Natalie Gilbert, ladies and gentlemen, says the announcer. Showtime. And she starts strong, but then about 15 seconds in, the wheels come off. She blanks on the words to the national anthem. She's sung this hundreds of times, but it's the environment. She makes a couple of stabs at continuing, but she's got nothing. Jeers from the crowd starting to come up now. She's standing there. This is chaos. What's going to happen? And then suddenly, somebody's out there with her. Big guy in a suit. Turns out it's the coach of one of the teams, Maurice Cheeks, and he's leapt off the bench, and he's had to charge past a few dozen people who were much closer, including the lineups of both teams that were standing right there at courtside. And now he's right there beside her. He clamps a big hand around her shoulder, and he just starts belting out the anthem from the place where she got stuck. Now, Mo Cheeks is very good at a lot of things. Singing is not one of them. But he's going for it anyway. And he's just trying to get this young woman going too. And it works, because in a moment, she's got it again. She's picked up the thread. And now they're both singing. And the fans are going bananas. And Big Mo Cheeks and little Natalie Gilbert get it over the finish line together to a huge roar from the crowd. And when you think about it, multiple character virtues are baked into that gesture he just did. And Mo Cheeks, by the way, later they said, "Why'd you do that?" And he said, "I don't know. It just happened, and next moment I found myself standing there." He just reacted. So there was compassion, there was generosity, self-sacrifice, humility. I don't think many people remember that basketball game, but I don't think you could forget it if you saw that national anthem. And I would love if my kids had seen it too. I gotta admit, I'm a sucker for these kind of parent-child stories, I guess just because that's where I am in my life. A few years back, there was a family where the daughter developed a rare form of leukemia, and the only chance she had was a bone marrow transplant. So a wide net was cast for potential donors, and they found one deadlock match, her little brother, who was, I think, 7 years old. So this was going to be a tough discussion. I think the little boy's name was Jacob, and his mom and dad took him aside, and they said, "Jacob, your sister's very sick, but you can help her. You have in your bones a kind of medicine that could make her well. We're wondering," big ask coming now, little man, "we're wondering if you'd be able to give her that medicine from inside you. It will be going to the hospital. Doctors will put a needle in and draw out some of the good stuff and give to your sister so she can live. Would you be willing to do that?" And the boy said, "Can I think about it?" Fair enough. It's a big ask. So the next morning at the breakfast table, Jacob goes, "So I've been thinking about it, and I've decided the answer is yes." "Yes, you'd like to help your sister?" "Yes." High fives all around. It's very sweet. So the day comes for the procedure, and the boy is wheeled into the operating room, a cannula inserted in his hip, and they draw out bone marrow, and it hurts like hell. And he sort of grimaces a little bit and takes the pain. And then when the doctors are out of the room and just his parents are there beside him, the boy says, "So when am I going to die?" And the parents realized they hadn't explained it right. oh my gosh, no, it isn't a trade, a life for a life, you for your sister. But that's how Jacob understood it. And he still said yes. So if you're feeling what I'm feeling right now, that feeling is the signal that there is moral beauty in the room. The other day at the dinner table, we were talking about the difference between bravery and courage. And I said, well, I think they're kind of synonymous, right? But Lila, our in-house linguist, pipes up, well, not really. If you look at the roots of the words, they're both French. Bravery comes from bras, the arms. So bravery is a physical act. I'm using my arms to fight, to protect me and to protect you. It's a physical act. Whereas courage comes from cœur, the heart. I'm risking my heart. So courage is an emotional act. Good distinction. And I feel like moral beauty belongs more in the courage category than in the bravery category. You know, to this I give my heart. To this I risk my heart. Now there's a further dimension to all of this. We've been talking about how moral beauty is about how it makes us feel, those goosebumps. But that's not the end of the story. Something happens after we observe an act of moral beauty and we react to it in our bodies with the goosebumps and whatnot. The next phase of moral beauty becomes what gets cranked up in us to do. When seeing that thing inspires us to do. Jonathan Haidt, some of you know that name, the psychologist, thinks that's really the nut of what moral beauty is all about, our desire to rise to the level of the example we've just witnessed. And awe is sort of the special sauce in the mix. It's awe that creates the opening for change. Awe elevates us. It plants in us, as Haidt puts it, the desire to be a different person. So seeing that basketball clip, you wonder, would I have leapt up and done that? Or would my own shyness or self-consciousness or fear of looking stupid have stopped me? And if so, maybe that's a character bug I need to work on. People we admire are a delivery system for values we aspire to. People we admire are a delivery system for values we aspire to. Lofty principles that are disembodied from human beings kind of don't go anywhere. They kind of just fizzle out on the launch pad. I have 3 old friends from college days, and we try to get together every couple of years somewhere and catch up. And on this last one, the last little outing we had a couple of months ago, I put the question out there. We were on a little hike beside the Chilcotin River, and I said, what's the most beautiful human behavior you guys have seen lately? And they came up with a few things. Generosity seemed to be the common denominator, and that fits, right? Charity is a lofty value, and there are different levels to it. So that was the opinion of Maimonides, the 12th century Jewish philosopher. He thought the highest level of charity, the very highest level, is a gift you give anonymously. That's how you know your intentions are pure and true, right? There's no virtue signaling because the act can't be traced to you. It's utterly unselfish. Or so I said on that walk by the river. At which point one of my pals, Curtis, goes, hold on, wait a second there, BG. Back in undergrad, I distinctly remember something you said. We had this long argument one day, and you insisted there's no such thing as a selfless act, that we all act in our own self-interest all the time. I said that? He said, yes. And I said, gosh, I'm so sorry for being so cynical. He said, no, you were very convincing. I said, well, I don't believe that anymore. He said, well, now you're going to have to convince me again in the other direction. So I guess maybe that's what I'm doing, attempting to do right now. Maybe that's what this reflection is about. And I'm pretty sure that it's what my first book called U-Turn was all about. Moral beauty is at heart a transformation story. You know, we change, we are changed, we ache to be changed. We're reaching, we're stretching, we're yearning to shed the self that got us this far on the mountain path so that we can take the next step, so we can become that better self that can get us up above the tree line. Francine Prose wrote a book called A Changed Man about a neo-Nazi who had an epiphany, recanted those hateful old beliefs and joined a human rights organization run by a Holocaust survivor. And an interviewer asked Francine on the book tour, "What do you think? Are human beings capable of changing?" She replied, "Human beings are incapable of not changing. It's just a question of how." I should tell you, I had a funny exchange with Allison while we were working on this service, trying to decide on the music. I haven't run this by you. I think it's okay. Allison likes to get a sense of what the reflection's going to be about, just generally, just kind of the vibe of it, so she can choose music that's a good fit. And she said, "Moral beauty, tell me more." I thought, well, maybe rather than tell, I'll just show. And I sent her a poem by Philip Levine. And in the poem, the speaker, who's a poor man, nonetheless goes through his day purchasing things from other people. And one of the quotes is, "The loaf of bread I bought from you became a hat. The dollar I put in your guitar case for a song became an apple," and so on and so on. Allison read the poem. Then she read it again. She took out her stethoscope and looked for the heartbeat there. Now, Allison is an extremely sensitive person, but poetry is subjective, and this one just didn't do it for her. Didn't give her the goosebumps. It felt like Econ 101, hymn to the free market, fanfare for the common neoliberal. "Interesting," I said. "I saw generosity, and you saw Reaganomics." Poetry can be a blunt instrument. We decided maybe a better example of moral beauty, one that kind of conveys the infectiousness of it, is the idea of paying it forward, right? Everyone can get that one. So there was a tiny news item from out of Winnipeg not too many years ago. One cold day in January, somebody at a Tim Hortons drive-thru decided on a whim to buy the coffee, not just for themselves, but for the guy behind them. And that driver, upon pulling up to the wicket, pulling out her wallet to pay, was told, no, this one's on the house. The driver in front of you got it. And she was so moved, she promptly did the same thing for the car behind her. So a chain of generosity ensues. 176 cars later, what we have in the books is a world record of low-stakes benevolence. And I was thinking, I wonder what the driver who broke the chain was thinking. Probably was, "Oh crap, I only have a loonie. This ends with me. I'm a monster." Maybe. Really, though, declaring it a world record kind of crasses it up, I think. Moral beauty isn't a competition. It can't be. How could it be? This is all just grist for the mill of the question, how should we live? How should we live? So, at the risk of getting a little bit political as we come in for a landing here, I got to say that this subject of virtue ethics that we've been exploring this morning, it's fallen a little bit out of fashion. Some consider it a relic of old white guy thinking, looking at you, Plato, you proto-colonialist son of a gun. And out go the Stoics as we rebuild the canon. But surely that's overkill, right? Surely there's still room for wisdom that has stood the test of thousands of years, especially for folks like us, Unitarians, who are always a sniff for ways to live with depth, meaning, and purpose, but don't have a religious playbook to follow to the letter. I just don't think any of this is inconsistent with our social justice mandate. We commit to building a fairer and a more equitable world, to hold power to account, to make sure those on the margins of society get access to the Super Mario Brothers power pills that can put them back in the race. It's just not true that you can't be progressive and believe in virtue ethics, personal moral development. I think they go together. I think that that's what's awesome about a community like this, is we get together on Sundays to figure out how to do it. Okay, so here's your homework assignment, and it's the one we talked about right off the top. When you get home, or tonight at the dinner table, write down 4 things that you found beautiful this week. One from each of those categories, and here they are again. A beautiful human-made thing, a beautiful natural thing, a beautiful idea, and a display of moral beauty. And take time, especially with that 4th one, because this is what it's all about. And maybe it turns out that you weren't the recipient of moral beauty this week, but the source of it. Wendell Berry said, "Every day you have less reason not to give yourself away." If you can make a story of yourself this week, if you can make an infectious example of yourself this week, then that is a kind of magic. May it be so.
His
Barry doing double duty there. Thank you. Perfectly chosen hymn. That's Allison's genius. For our offering, our outreach recipient this week is Food Stash. Close to 2/3 of the food produced in Canada is wasted. Last year, Food Stash was able to keep 1.5 million pounds of good food out of our landfills. It sent that food that would otherwise have been wasted to 36 community organizations, 120 low-income households with disabilities or long-term illnesses. This is a really good NGO. Please give as generously as you are able. For these gifts and all you do to help weave the tapestry of love that we call community, this is an ongoing experiment in distributed ministry, and we are all the ministers. We give it. Right, a few announcements. Allison, do you want to go first, or do you want to come up there? Okay. Well, first of all, I'll tell you it's Super Sunday, and that means there are victuals downstairs to enjoy, and it will be great. And please do come down, and if you're new, talk to anybody. And if you have $5 to contribute to soup, that'd be awesome. And if you don't, please just enjoy the soup. Next week, you're in for a real treat. We have Catherine Nicholson up with who's going to be talking about unexpected gifts. The world throws us a lot of curveballs, and we may have never asked for them, but after the fact, sometimes we see the value in them for us, for our development as humans. I think it's a good thing we're not in charge of choosing how the pachinko ball falls, because we might choose wrong a lot of the time. Anyway, we'll look forward to that from Catherine next week. There are also a couple of dinner events that still have space. You can check with Janny if you want to sign up for these. They look really fun. Allison, I'll invite you to make a couple of announcements.
So my first is actually both are questions. My first one is, do you remember we had a talk about all sorts of things a few months ago, and after church, and several of you said you really wanted quiet, a place to be quiet. So we created a little quiet room that was available before the service starts for anyone who wants to just have some stillness. And I'm at the stage, we've been doing this now for several months, and I'm interested to know, is it worth it? Because we put it
put it together and we put it apart, and Andrea comes early and she does things with it, and it's wonderful. Is anyone actually using it? Bruce uses it, and that's it. Okay, that's very useful information. Would anyone like to use it who is currently not using it? Maybe? Okay, I'll keep doing it for another month, and then I'll check in again. Okay, so one other thing is, do you remember about a few months ago now, Sue did a service on reconciliation, and she had a marvelous speaker, Ken Coates, who spoke to us. And one of the things Ken said was, don't always expect the Indigenous people to come to your ceremonies. Maybe you can go to their ceremonies, be absorbed in what is their culture, our culture, their culture. And I thought, yeah, why not we do this? So I would like to see if anyone here would be interested, if we had an invite to a potlatch, an Indigenous ceremony. Are any of you interested in participating in that with me? Okay. All right. That's it. That's all I really needed to find out. Thank you very much.
Good to know. Just as we come in for a landing here, I want to say a service like this one you've just heard can feel a little bit self-helpy sometimes. And the problem with self-help tropes is that they can be great for reducing stress, our individual stress. But if that's only what they're about, then that's not enough. It can actually be the case that a tummy rub like this distracts us from the work to be done. But I would say what we've been doing today, investigating what's beautiful in the world to us, I think Dr. Keltner would say that's not actually about reducing stress, that's about generating meaning. We're trying to figure out what are the big things we need to care about, to orient our lives toward. And awe, this emotion we've been ginning up this morning, awe does that work for you, says Dr. Keltner. It asks, what's my relationship with the big systems of our lives, the big systems that move us culturally and individually? For some people, that's music. For some, it's a conception of the divine. For others, it's ecosystems. But awe is the delivery system for all of them, and that's why it matters so much. Few people understood this better than Louis Armstrong, so let's let him take us out this morning.
What a
don't want to say anything more, but I will say thank you to everybody who made this service possible, from the greeters to the ushers to the tech people, Malcolm, and thank you to all of you for continuing to show up. I'm going to say it, and it won't sound as trite as usual, but you are awesome. Let's extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame. The world calls us to live with depth, meaning, and purpose.
We go forth with courage and love.
Let's circle round.